Welcome to the Economy magazine at I-24 News, where we give you a daily view on world markets and global innovation. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Coming up today, Eurozone chiefs reach a unanimous agreement on Greece, and the Pan Am Games kick off in Toronto. Let's start now with the headlines. Well, after a marathon summit, Eurozone leaders have agreed on another 3-year bailout for Greece, likely requiring Athens to near total surrender to creditors' demands. By Wednesday, the Greek parliament is expected to pass pension overhauls and sales tax hikes, the very ones voters rejected in a dramatic referendum 1 week ago. Also, Greece's creditors are demanding up to 50 billion euros in state-owned assets to be transferred to a new fund under the supervision of European leaders. We'll have more on this later on in the program. Meanwhile, China shares led Asian markets higher on Monday, though trading for hundreds of Chinese stocks remain halted, part of Beijing's efforts to curb selling amid a massive market sell-off. The Shanghai Composite Index finished up 2.4% at 3,971.14. The index now up 13.2% since Wednesday's close, but still down 23.2% from its June high. The smaller Shenzhen Composite ticked up 4.2%, down a third from that June peak. Stocks also rose 1.3% in Hong Kong, encouraged by the news that Europe had reached a deal on Greece. And U.S. regulators on Monday are set to reveal findings from a probe into bond market conditions. The review focuses mostly on the flash crash of October 15th, when bond yields plunged within minutes, though quickly recovered. Another key issue regulators are concerned about: the market is the largest on record, but the pace at which treasuries trade is slowing down. Greece, the big story on Monday. Our French team filed this next report recapping the highlights.
It took nearly 20 hours of tough negotiations. Athens finally reached an agreement with a unanimous Eurozone.
Today we had only one objective: to reach an agreement. After 17 hours of negotiations, we have finally reached it. Someone can say that we have an agreement.
An agreement that has no Grexit. The country will not be leaving the Eurozone.
The Commission has always insisted on the fact that we could not accept any form of Grexit.
Athens will now be able to benefit from a third bailout plan, and Greece will gain support from the European Stability Mechanism, the details of which have yet to be negotiated.
The approval of several national parliaments, including the Greek parliament, is now needed for negotiations on an ESM program to formally begin.
But the fate of Greece is far from sealed. This is only a first step. In exchange for the extra help, the country must establish a list of drastic reforms.
Without doubt, we have the feeling that it is the first step to rebuilding growth. Now we have to implement measures and continue with the steps.
And for Prime Minister Tsipras, the coming days ahead will be difficult. He will have to justify the choice for austerity, an austerity he promised to fight and was massively rejected by the Greek people in the July 5th referendum.
And now for insight on the market impact, we are joined by Bron Insana, financial markets expert in the New York City area. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Natalie.
Well, you follow this story regularly. How do you read the latest development?
Well, I mean, it's a net positive, obviously, for European markets. It takes away a great deal of uncertainty, and while it may be relatively punitive to the Greek economy, it does ensure that some of the peripheral nations of Europe maintain some fiscal sanity as well, knowing what the price would be for getting out of line, as Greece has done. So the markets are responding quite favorably. European shares are up between 1% and 2%, and stock index futures here in the U.S. are also poised to open higher. We might see another 100-point pop for the Dow this morning.
Were you surprised by Tsipras' move here?
Well, it is, the whole thing is rather odd. I mean, playing out the way it did, going so far as to get a referendum to support his position and then capitulating completely to the demands of creditors. I don't think the referendum ever strengthened his hand as he thought it might have. In fact, I think it probably just hardened the positions of Germany in particular, not necessarily to punish Greece, but certainly to force them to do what's financially and fiscally responsible. And so now, rather than coming away with a deal that might have been easier on them a couple of weeks ago, they have harsher terms, they have more strict reforms to adhere to, and they also have to put some of their state-owned properties into escrow in order to help finance the bailout itself. So as game theory goes, their former finance minister was supposed to be an expert in that. It would appear from that perspective they lost.
Well, very interesting point there. Thank you very much for your insight, Ron and Sana. Shifting gears now a bit, the Pan American Games kick off in Toronto, but so far, not quite the financial bang locals had hoped for.
There's excitement in the air in central Toronto as the Pan American Games get underway. But even at the Games epicenter, there are those with concerns about the cost.
If the city will lose money after this, I think it makes no sense.
A lot of the cities that have run Olympics and countries that have run them have never brought back in enough revenue for what they've spent. I mean, even in Vancouver, they didn't make back as much as they had put out.
With ticket sales well below initial targets, receipts are only likely to cover a small fraction of the bill. Meanwhile, businesses are worried that tourist numbers may actually be down this summer as visitors try to avoid the disruption. The Games has gone well over its initial budget, with security costs more than doubling. Total spending could reach as high as $3 billion Canadian dollars, which doesn't impress local opposition politicians.
These things tend to be an opportunity for politicians to pat each other on the back and maybe push through some infrastructure projects. But we shouldn't be building our infrastructure around games. We should be building infrastructure because we want to have world-class cities like we have in Toronto.
Those infrastructure projects include a train linking the airport to the city centre and the complete regeneration of the distillery district, the area around the athletes' village. Organisers say such projects will help the city for years to come and were much needed.
The last major games that we've held where there's been building of infrastructure is back in 1930, the Empire Games. You know, we haven't done anything at this level ever in the history of this country. These are the largest sporting events, bigger than the Olympics in Vancouver. You know, 7,500 athletes, 10,000 when you include the officials. This is massive.
As the competition begins, the hope is that locals will get into the spirit of the Games and feel like they're getting some bang for their billions of bucks.
Earlier, I had the opportunity to meet with a leader in Norway's tech habitat on a special visit to Israel. We are joined now by Jaya Tomlinson, Canadian community builder and entrepreneur working in Norway's tech city, Trondheim. Jaya is co-founder of Diggs Innovation Center and The List and TechList magazines, and just completed the Future European Leaders Tour hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Israel. 38 delegates from 21 countries in Europe are selected based on their roles as innovation leaders in their home countries. Well, thank you very much for being with us. What made you decide to come to Israel and partake in this program?
Firstly, thank you for having me. I was contacted by the Israeli embassy in Norway. I work both, as you say, as an entrepreneur and in the innovation environment in Trondheim, but I'm also working as an advisor for the city and the executive office. So I was contacted based off of my inner knowledge in Norway and the ability to raise exposure on some of the activities that are happening here in Israel.
Well, what were some of the activities that they prepared for you, and what was the most memorable experience?
By far, I was most blown away by some of the new innovation happening by the people who have, I hope I'm not ruining anything here, but have started a new product called Genie. It is a 3D food printer.
Wow.
Yes, and they have been behind some of the most interesting innovations that we've seen around the world in the last 10 years. Very authentic people, modern-day mad scientists, we should say. Other memorable opportunities have been listening to local perspectives on entrepreneurship, which I believe is a game changer for the world going forward, not only in peace resolutions, but also improving the socioeconomic well-being of people here and in the world.
Jaya Tomlinson, very much appreciated.
Thank you.
For further analysis on the big story of the day, we are joined in set by Muriel Matalon of Gornitsky, an Israeli law firm. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So Greece again in the spotlight here, striking contrast with the referendum that we saw just 1 week ago. What are your thoughts?
As we expected, Greek theater is the best theater in the world, and there's always a sensation. So last week, there was a vote, 60% no, and a week later, an agreement is signed. Is it different? I'm sure scholars will write PhD on comparing the old one to the new one. Nobody can tell. I'm sure the Germans, Europe will say this one is much better for us. The Greek people will say this one is better for us, and it doesn't matter.
Well, did the Prime Minister betray his principles and his leftist Syriza party?
I don't think so. At the end of the day, he was talking about pride. They all realized, the Greek people and the Greek government, that reform will be needed. So this was more a political issue of pride, the ability to say no to Europe and to go almost on the verge of bankruptcy and then come back to the table.
Well, how effective is just saying no if you don't actually get the terms that you wanted? They're going to have to unleash all these austerity moves here that they really didn't want.
Well, they took a big risk, but at the end of the day, it was clear that both sides need this agreement, and it's very clear to the Greek people they need reform. They need reform in their labor system. They need reform in their government system. They need to be more efficient. They need to work harder. Without that, probably Greece will not be saved, so they understand it.
Well, that is the typical narrative that we are hearing from Europe and Germany, and also just in mainstream media, but just tapping into some sources in Greece, the narrative there is very different. They're saying here that Germany is this, big enemy that is basically squeezing them, and that it's very unfair, that they have unfair terms here, that they are working very hard. What is the counter narrative here?
Well, I think this is a very clear response of the Greek people. It's very natural. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is that the Greek people need to work harder. They need to abandon, to a certain extent, the ouzo and the sirtaki, and to go back to work like the rest of Europe. And while it's easy from a political point of view to blame the Germans, and obviously the Germans have a lot of burden on their shoulders, at the same time, there were 17 countries all over Europe who were on the other side. And some of them were in the past in the same situation.
Well, we have seen today a lot of the markets all over the world, especially in Asia, and also Europe now rallying on this news. What is the impact long-term for the markets in this coming week, and also the global economy?
Well, definitely Greece was in the picture for a while. The next one is China, and it's so different. The numbers are different. The impact on world economy is different. And we're going to see for the first time this unusual experiment of trying to have a totalitarian government with a free market economy system working one alongside the other. Will it continue to work? I believe it will, but there are going to be changes.
Is this much a bigger story? Is it really that much of a bigger story here?
Definitely. The numbers are much bigger. China is second only to the United States, and even that is temporary in terms of its size, in terms of its impact on the world economy. And if anything happens to the Chinese market, to the Chinese economy, it will have a direct impact worldwide.
But in a sense, this market has been too hot. Some market experts call it a bubble. So is this a stabilization effect here that we might want to see?
You may relate to this famous song which says, what goes up must go down, spinning wheel. That's the truth of the matter. And a market economy has these turns. People were just not accustomed to the fact that while you adopt a market economy, you may see not only rises and rises and each year make more money, but sometimes you have to lose and you have to learn out of it and reform your economy. And that's probably what the Chinese people and the Chinese leader will have to do.
Well, let's bring this closer to home now with Israel and its budget situation. Can you highlight that for us as well?
Well, definitely. We are now faced with a government who has a very small minority and with two moves that go to totally different ways. On one hand, you have the ultra-Orthodox who are demanding what was promised to them when they signed into the coalition. On the other hand, the finance minister, Mr. Kahlon, who wants to bring social reforms, and that cannot be done together without really exceeding the original budget. We'll have to see. And I would say at the end of the day, there is a chance that some compromise will be achieved.
How do you think that will be achieved? Compromise in the Middle East, especially in Israel, is that achievable?
Well, the truth of the matter is that they all want to stay in power, and they will have to accept it.
Indeed. Well, just real briefly, also Kahlon is this new figure here. Tell us about his role.
Well, definitely he comes with a very clear message to try to make this government more aware of social reforms and the social needs of the people in the middle class and even lower. At the same time, the economy is moving ahead. You see people coming into the market, buying more apartments, and he says, stop, don't buy any more apartments. Will it work? We'll have to see.
Well, thank you, as always, for your insight. Very much appreciate it here. Muriel Matta of Gornitsky. That wraps up our global economic coverage today. Do stay tuned tomorrow, same time, same place, from the Jaffa Port in Tel Aviv. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you very much for watching.